The Sega Dreamcast is one of the most legendary systems of all time. It pioneered so many innovations in the gaming industry with its built-in modem port. You had the 56K, you had the 128-bit graphics. There was a lot of cool things about the Sega Dreamcast. And who could forget those cute little VMUs that they did have for memory cards, which you could play games on almost like a Nintendo Switch, taking it away from the TV. So the Sega Dreamcast in its own right was so legendary. You fast forward to 20 years later and the Nintendo Switch is blazing its own path. Much like the Sega Dreamcast, they didn't look at what the competition was doing and just copying. They said, we're gonna go our own route, whether for good or for bad. Now, in the Dreamcast case, there was a lot of things that kind of halted it from being successful outside of what Sega was doing. But the Nintendo Switch has been able to find a lot of success. And there's a lot of common ground between the Sega Dreamcast and what it did all those years back and what Nintendo's doing with the Switch. So of course, naturally, there's a lot of crossover with the fans out there. So a lot of fans do want to see Sega Dreamcast games on the Nintendo Switch. Now, Sega is a company that is used to making blunders. I'll be honest here, guys. I don't have too many amazing things to say about the current day Sega, but I do feel that they do have one thing that other companies don't have, and that is the Sega Dreamcast. So let's go ahead and get into some of the Sega Dreamcast games that need to come over to the Nintendo Switch. The fans want these games. Now, don't worry if your game isn't on the list. I'll make sure to say at the end of the video, so make sure you watch all the way through, what games you want to see that I didn't list here. So let's go ahead and get into it first. And I have to start with this game because this is one of the games that endeared me to the Sega Dreamcast in the first place, and that is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I remember playing this game in the arcade and saying, man, this is absolutely nuts. I love this game. It's so fast. It's so just crazy. There's all sorts of characters. It was almost like a bliss of kid coolness all right there. All of your favorite characters, right? All the different X-Men and all different Ryu and Ken and all of that. Magneto versus Wolverine. I mean, it was just nuts. You got Psylocke, Guile. There was just pretty much everybody in this one here. Everybody is here. At least that's what I thought back then. And playing that style of game in the arcade, which necessarily wasn't my favorite way to play. I didn't like using like the arcade stick and everything like that. So when it came over to the Dreamcast and I finally got my hands on one, it was absolutely amazing. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is easily one of the best fighting games ever created. Despite it being a little bit busted with some of those infinites that you have, it's still a ton of fun, especially if you're just playing the game with your friends and they aren't like super crazy good at the game and like can beat you every time. If you can have a nice back and forth between your friends, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was one of the best games to play. I remember playing that game into all hours of the night back in the day and just having so much fun with the complexity of the battle system, but also the simplicity of being able to pull off different combos and everything, and also putting together all your different teams. That really just fits the Switch right there. Being able to just kind of gather around the TV, play right there on the go, play as well. I think it would be a lot of fun, and it's one of those games that made the Dreamcast what it was. It solidified its status as having these really cool, pretty much nearly arcade perfect fighting games on the system. Now, Street Fighter Third Strike is kind of a game that you can combine with this one, but it's sort of already on the Switch with the Street Fighter collection, but apparently that one's not necessarily the best port of the arcade version of the game, and I think the Dreamcast one might be a bit better. So if they were able to bundle that a little bit together here with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and of course Street Fighter Third Strike, that would be amazing. But of course, as you guys know, there's some issues with the licensing with Marvel vs. Capcom. We've had some issues for a while now. You look at Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So I don't know if this will ever happen, but I think that between Disney, between Sega, and between Nintendo, they need to all kind of work together to get something done so we can see Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the next game here is a little bit of a curveball. Some of you guys might not seen this one coming, and that is Soul Reaver. This is a game that was pretty much brought over from the PlayStation 1, and I'll be honest here, guys, I was blown away by this when I was younger. I felt that this was one of the greatest single player games that I had ever played, because it was such a cool concept. Absorb people, absorb their soul, right? Like Shang Tsung style type of thing. But Shang Tsung, that was a fighting game where he did that. This one was an actual action adventure, and it was just super fun. I thought the level design was good. I thought there was some issues here and there, but it was still an innovative game. It was still a very fun single player experience, and I think it was one of the experiences that defined the attitude of the Dreamcast, outside of the stuff like Sonic and some of the other games that we're about to talk about. But speaking of some of those other games and the attitude of the Dreamcast, this game kind of flipped things all the way around, man. And that was Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio. This game back then, I didn't think it was that great. When I first played it, I was like, this is all right. But I remember just renting it again because I went to my Video City and there wasn't any of the other Dreamcast games. They had a severe lacking of Dreamcast games back then, or they'd all be rented out. So sometimes I'd go to multiple Video Cities, but I'd just be on my bike. So I was like, I'm not trying to go all around town to find some Dreamcast games to play for the weekend. But they always had a good number of copies of Jet Grind Radio. So I remember renting it over and over and having some fun eventually. Now, it wasn't my favorite game out there. It really wasn't on the Dreamcast, but it was still a legendary game. It was still a game that has such a cult fan base, and it's inspired other developers to kind of make games in the same light. So I do think that a game like Jet Grind Radio would be really cool on the Nintendo Switch. It fits the style, the vibrant colors, the different color Joy-Cons. It's just something that I think fans would really understand and enjoy. And think about the HD Rumble implementation that they can put into there. I think that would be really cool as well. Now, the next game that we're going to talk about here, guys, is a game that many of you guys probably think about the GameCube with this one, but it originated on the Dreamcast, and that was Skies of Arcadia. Now, the game that I'm talking about with the GameCube is Skies of Arcadia Legends. That is the port of the Dreamcast version with some extra content in there. It's actually the best version of the game. So it would be really cool if we've got something. Guys, it has pretty much been more than 15 years, right? More than 15 years, and there's been no official re-release of Skies of Arcadia on anything outside of the GameCube. That was the last time that we got anything. I'm not talking about Dolphin or anything like that, some type of emulator. I'm talking about Sega saying, hey, here is a release. There's no PS4, there's no Switch, there's no Xbox, there's nothing. There's no PS3, there's no 360. Sega is just holding on to this one and saying, all of you guys, go home. They took their ball and went home and have not re-released this. And I think that Skies of Arcadia is one of those games, once again, fits the Switch perfectly. You could do some cool Joy-Con combinations with it. Being able to play that huge type of style RPG anywhere that you want really fits the system. And if you look at it, it's one of the most innovative RPGs for its time. And even still to this day, you have the dual mechanic of being able to fight on the ground in addition to fighting airship battles as well. That was nothing like anything else back in the day. You had the magic that you could infuse the cannons and shoot them. It was really cool. Skies of Arcadia is one of those games that I think that RPG fans, if you missed it back in the day, you can still pick it up today, play it, and have a lot of fun. Seriously, it really is a great game. Now, there are some other games that Sega Dreamcast is famous for, and necessarily I'm not the most for it, but I gotta mention some of these games here, guys, and that is, of course, Sonic Adventure. You can't have Sega Dreamcast without Sonic, and Sonic Adventure 2, but really Sonic Adventure 1, the first one, that really did put the Dreamcast on the map. When you first saw Sonic running around with those graphics and everything, and there are still a large base of people who love the Sonic Adventure games. Once again, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I do think that just because of the history, just because of how iconic the original Sonic Adventure was, in addition to Sonic Adventure 2, which I did play and beat both of those games, I think that they have to be on there. They just have to, because it's Sonic Adventure, right? Now, there are a number of other games that you could talk about here. You have Space Channel 5, you also have Quake, that was a game, Soul Calibur. There were so many great games on the Dreamcast. But I want to know, what are you guys' thoughts? What Dreamcast games have to make it on the Nintendo Switch at some point? When do you think this is going to happen? What are your favorite Dreamcast games and why? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section below. And as a bonus, tell me where the Dreamcast ranks. When it comes to your favorite systems of all time, where does the Dreamcast rank, man? I'd love to hear that as well. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for this RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.